Is your offer a magic pill? And what does that mean for your pricing? Hello, everyone. I'm Janine Liston, and you are live with the Pricing Lady. This show is all about helping small business owners get better at pricing, build the right pricing strategy so you can charge for the value you deliver and have a sustainably profitable business. Welcome to my guest today, Jen McFarland. Hello, Jen.
Hi, Janine. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for being here. I'm super excited about this conversation. Why don't you start off by introducing yourself to everyone?
Sure. My name is Jen McFarland. My business is called Women Conquer Business, and I'm on the tech side of marketing. So what that means is I'm really interested in things like automation. I look at software. My background is actually working at corporate and large scale businesses doing software research and implementation. So making the leap into marketing and helping small business owners with finding the right software that works for their business has actually been a really natural fit. And I actually started my business as a side hustle when I was still working in a really hectic work environment. And I learned that there are just so many people out there who need what I offer. I don't know how often you talk to people who maybe don't have that realization that like what they do is special and different. And I can say that like 5 years ago, when I first was, tinkering around with having a business, I thought everybody could do what I did. So it was like a really eye-opening thing to realize how many people struggle with tech and hate it actually, because I just think it's so useful and helpful that I didn't have a clue about what was going on out there.
Yeah. Well, that's really interesting. And yeah, I think most of us out there who have started our own businesses, many people didn't even take into account that they might need to know some of that stuff. And some people like me are kind of a dig in and do it yourself. And then other people are like, no, I'm outsourcing that as quickly as possible. And some people just ignore it completely, right?
Absolutely. And then until things go wrong, and then they kind of, they flip out about it a little bit, and I think that for me, my interest in it actually started when I was working in marketing years ago as a graphic designer. In many companies, the only people who have a Mac are the people who are doing graphic design. And that was always the case in my initial career, doing marketing. And then, we were just like our own tech support. We just had to figure it out because the tech people were like, yeah, no, I don't touch Mac, and then fast forward through all of this time. And then all of a sudden I'm doing tech project management at scale. And it was just a natural fit then when I wanted to help people to realize like there's this gap there that not everybody has had the same experiences. And you're absolutely right. People are so funny about technology. They're either like all in, like when we first met, I was like, wow, she knows about all this stuff I'm like suggesting or just, in conversation. And then I meet a lot of people who are like, nope. Don't talk to me about that. That's scary.
Yeah. So I mean, I have the disease of learning things. So, anything that I can learn that, is a challenge to me at first, I'm like, all right, I'm going to conquer you.
Me too. That's lifelong learner. Totally guilty.
Yeah. It's a disease. I think you've been fortunate enough to make a business out of it, which is great. So how did you said a little bit, you decided to start your own business, but what really led to you starting your business?
It was really funny. I had, like I said, I had a really high stress job as working as an executive implementing large scale programs. But I wasn't really having a lot of like one-to-one interaction with people. And I really missed that. I was a Peace Corps volunteer. I lived abroad for 2 years and I love that hands-on, let's make change on the ground situation. Like I just love it. And I wasn't getting that when I was working at the city of Portland here in Oregon. And like, I never had any contact with the public. So it started there as kind of like a little, niggling, like, okay, what else is out there? I kind of miss this. And then I remember going to a retreat for a gym that I belonged to. And the business owner was constantly working like the whole time and then like engaging with us and then had like all these things to do. And she was so frustrated because her web developer wasn't responding and nothing was working. And she was like having to like copy and paste all this stuff into multiple places. And I was like, what are you doing? And she's like, well, this is just how it is. And I'm like, well, it doesn't have to be that way. And then I started paying attention to, like, I had all this kind of circle of women who were business owners, and they were all kind of in the same boat. Like, nobody was treating them well because they were small clients. There was still a lot of, and I think this still exists, a lot of people who are like, women don't do tech methodology out there among the people who were providing services for them. And I was like, well, there has to be a better way, and I know how to do that. So, giddy up. Let's go.
Let's go. Okay, yeah. Interesting. And when it came to starting your own business and doing pricing, what was that like for you at first?
Yeah, right. Yeah, like this is this is a little vulnerable, really, because when I first started pricing, I was trying to like be affordable for the people I worked with, which I still believe in heavily, but then at the same time, my calculations were completely off. It wasn't based at all on like this vast experience that I have. I have 25 years in my field, and I'm not just making it up as I go along when it comes to technology and marketing. Like, I have real corporate experience in both. So but at the same time, my pricing was like, I mean, I don't know if I should even tell you what, it was hourly, and it was like so incredibly low that there was no way that I was going to be able to make a living off of it.
Right. Yeah. And I think a lot of people find themselves in that place when they're just starting out, but they don't realize it. They get a couple of years into it, and then, it's not going where they want it to go. And it occurs to them, wait a minute, something is wrong here. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's always like this weird dichotomy where, as somebody who is all about service and has worked abroad and lived abroad and done something like Peace Corps, like, I always want to be of service, but then you have to remember that you also have to be of service to yourself. And like, if you're working yourself to death and you're not making any money, you're not actually showing up in the best way that you can.
Right. Right. And that is just probably the crux of everything. And one of the big messages that people can get is that you do have fair. I always say that fair means that you're fair, just as fair to yourself as you are to your customers and clients. And so I wholeheartedly agree with that. So one of the things that we wanted to talk about was when your offer isn't the magic pill. So why don't you tell us a little bit what you mean by the magic pill?
Yeah. So because I have all of this experience and I base everything on research and what's going on in the world of marketing, I don't market myself as someone, as I said before we got started, who's like, I can get you 500 leads in 5 minutes. And, I don't market myself in that way at all. And part of my journey has been, that the people that I want to work with don't want that either. But it's still presented problems or challenges along the way, because, there's so many people out there who seem to want that like really quick result, when that's not necessarily going to get you the long-term benefits that it is that a real business owner is looking for. So that's what I mean by a magic pill. Now, that said, what I offer actually is a magic pill, in that it gives people more time and money, and they can focus on the parts of their business that they actually love. When your tech is actually working for you and you're not having to work on it all the time, that gives you a lot more freedom and a lot more choices about how you as a business owner are spending your time. Because I have to acknowledge that not everybody spends their time testing software as much as I do. I mean, I just love it. And yet I know that like most of the people who are watching this, or who live, or who are watching it later, are going to be like, well, that sounds boring. I don't want to test software. So we all have to do that thing that brings us joy.
Right.
And the tagline for my business is actually, bring joy back to your business. And for me, the way that I bring joy back to people is, I don't judge people about whatever it is that has them tied in knots. And I help you make your business life easier and more joyful, because you're not worried about how you're showing up online, or if the automation is actually going to work or not.
Right. So, wow, there's a lot in there. I think one of the first points that I want to bring back is being very clear about who you're targeting. That is absolutely essential when it comes to pricing. And you are very clear about who you want to reach out to and how you want to connect with them, on what level you want to connect to them. And I think that that enables you to do more with your pricing than maybe if you weren't, that true to yourself and to who you're targeting at the same time. So kudos for that, for sure.
Well, that's been a journey. I mean, that took a long time to really a lot of my colleague Sandra Hughes calls it customer discovery, and that's really what it is. It was kind of like bad experiences, good experiences, and then you're like, I want more of that and less of this, So it's just kind of that journey, and I think that that's how you also establish pricing,
Yes.
is through that understanding of meeting with people and talking to people and getting a real sense of who really is your jam, like who vibes off of you the most.
Well, and when I work with people, that's where we start. Right now, I just started a challenge yesterday. It's a customer value challenge, which is how to do those pesky little customer interviews. And, people really, it amazes me. I can tell probably about 80% of the people that I ask, have you done customer interviews? They kind of go, no. Yeah, and it's always funny. I can always tell what's coming. But it is really important, not just to pricing. It is absolutely critical. It's the first step when it comes to pricing. But when it comes to your selling, to your marketing, and to everything else you're doing in your business, I always go back to the late Tony Hsieh, and when he wrote his book about Zappos and how they went about their vision and their mission and their values. It was so customer centric, and they really lived for fulfilling those things for not just the customer, but also themselves. But it was all rooted in how they wanted to be with the customer. And I very much admire that.
100%. I mean, and I come into it with my work as well, where I'm like, well, so do you know what your customers want? And they're like, no, not really. And I'm like, well, have you asked them? Like a fundamental piece of digital marketing, and I think of all marketing, is that you ask for feedback. And people are too scared to ask for feedback, to be like, so how's this going? How do you really feel about, what about the work that we're doing? And the thing is, even if somebody tells you something bad, it's good because it gives you the chance to adjust and change what you're doing. And then one of the books that I really love is the E-Myth book. And they talk about that like gold standard, right?
Yes.
But you're never going to get to that gold standard if you don't ask people how it's going along the way. And nor are you going to ever be able to price right, because I mean, you're not delivering services maybe at the level that people expect.
Yeah. And I was talking with a client about that this morning, that when you try to be a generalist selling anything to everyone, you end up with lower than average prices, because that's the only way to get, the breadth of customers that you might need. But with time, that you just become more general and your prices keep sliding. And so it's really difficult. It's very important. And I love the E-Myth. That is a fabulous book. So there's 2 books for you, ladies and gentlemen, that you definitely want to check out. Bringing joy back to business. This is really great. And I think one of the things when I first read this magic pill statement, one of the things I always caution people about is that you have to be really careful about your own mindset in relationships. So if you see what you're doing as not so valuable to people, i.e., it's not the magic pill, that can also influence what you do and how customers perceive that. So how have you navigated that yourself?
Yeah, I would definitely say that this has been part of my journey, is kind of navigating this and realizing that what I offer is magic to other people. And just because it's not magic to me doesn't mean that it's any less valuable. And that said, like, I also, part of what makes me different from my competitors or other people is that I don't want people to feel like technology is magic, because then magic is not something you can understand. It's not something that you can address. It's not necessarily something you can fix. So part of it is that I'm really passionate about helping my clients understand that they can take care of these things. They just need some documentation from their providers. They maybe need a little bit of knowledge so that they know when things are going wrong, but it's not magic. And even though it feels like it, even though it's great when your stuff is working,
Right.
it's not actually magic. So,
Mhm.
and that is what's very counterculture about what I offer compared to other marketers.
Mhm.
Like, I like to work myself out of a job. Not all marketers like to do that.
Right.
And so it's a lot different. And so part of it is like, I'm not offering a magic pill in terms of just of this relationship. It's a different relationship when you
Mhm.
work with me. It is magic, I think, the perception of people that I work with. But it is different. And that
Mhm.
said, I also want to address the other part of what you're saying, which is,
Mhm.
remember, I came into this thinking everybody could do what I could do.
Mhm.
So part of my journey has been like, well, I guess it actually is a magic pill. And in fact, last night I was
Mhm.
talking to some colleagues and they're like, but you do offer a magic pill.
Yeah.
And so it is kind of navigating those ideas
Mhm.
of, how do you communicate that, and it is about just communicating results. It's about communicating how the emotional change has occurred, which is what happens a lot when I work with people. Is
Mhm.
it's this, like, I don't feel like I can empower somebody. I feel like empowerment comes from within. But what I can do is show somebody to the water fountain where they can drink the empowerment and feel it for themselves. And you don't get that from a lot of nerdy tech people. But
Yeah.
what I want is for people to really feel better and more secure in their business.
Mhm. Mhm. No. No, I think it's a great example because, people often when it comes to things that are technical or things that seem obvious to the specialist, it's not obvious to everyone else. And we have to remember that there's value in the expertise that we bring to the table, and the experience that we have to be able to make that something that's digestible or usable for the non-technical person as well. And that's part of the magic that happens, baby.
Absolutely. Like, one of the jokes that I give to people is like, well, you don't want me to do your taxes. Like, like, we all have our lane,
Yeah.
and what
Mhm.
I find, it's kind of back to that generalist comment, right? If you don't stay in your lane, like, you're never going to be able to charge what your
Mhm.
value is, what your worth is. If you're always trying to do all the things,
Yeah.
you can't do that. And so I joke about money because it's the thing that I'm like, yeah, no, I don't math. I don't do that. But you have to be aware, and then you have to be willing to pay other people. I
Yeah.
honestly think that the more you're willing to pay other people, the more people are going to pay you, because
Yeah.
you see that value, and so you're willing to
Exactly.
pay somebody else, and then you're willing to also charge what you're worth when you start
Yeah.
paying other people.
It's something I hear from people a lot of the time. They're like, well, I would never pay that. And I said, yeah, but are you your own target customer? You have
Yeah.
to look at it from their perspective, not from your perspective. But I also believe if you've never paid out that much money for something, it is hard for you to fathom somebody else doing it. So I think you're right that there is sort of a reciprocation at some point that needs to happen there. So
Yeah.
I have a couple of wrap up questions because we're getting to the end here. The first one is what is the one thing that you really want people to take away from our conversation today?
I think it's that you need to understand that pricing is a journey, and you have to be looking at it all the time. You have to adjust for it all the time, and you have to listen to what people are telling you about it. It wasn't too long ago that I had a really big client and I submitted a proposal, and they're like, "You're the only one who listened to us. You're the only one who gave us a really personalized proposal,
Mhm.
but you're not charging enough. So here, we're going to pay you $2,000 more than what you said." And I was like, "Hot dog, more money." And then the next breath, I was like embarrassed because I was like, "Okay,
Yeah.
so, I need to be charging more, clearly."
Mhm.
And so taking that on and understanding it, like, that's part of my journey, and I think it's part of everybody else's as well,
Mhm.
is to understand your expertise, talk to other people about what they charge, but know your rate may be different.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, very good. And in a business context and in terms of starting your own business, what is it that you know now and you really wish you knew back in the very beginning that, you know, business owners or people who are just starting out should understand or think about?
You know, I would say I've given this a lot of thought, you know, COVID time, you have more time to think about these things. I would say that it's mostly that it's more of a journey than people make it look. You know, don't believe everything that you see and read. Understand that some of these big names you're looking at, they have entire staffs like helping them with everything. You know, you can't look at Gary Vaynerchuk and be like, oh, I'm going to do that, you know, because he has like hundreds of people helping him, and you're not going to have that. So it is about like being excellent at what you do and coming up with what you can do over and over again in service to others, and working with that and understanding that you might not be charging enough at the beginning. Because I know I wasn't. I was charging a really, really low rate.
Yeah. Yeah. Most people were, for sure. Most people have been. I would say that when I ask the question, what was your biggest pricing mistake? Most people say I didn't charge enough at the beginning. And, you know, part of my role is to help people do that for less longer or not start there at all. But, you know, these conversations are about helping people be aware that they need to consider that as well.
And don't do things in trade. I did that too.
Don't do exchanges, you mean?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Or if you do, be very clear about what those terms are.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you're just working for free and that doesn't serve anybody.
Yeah, I agree. So Jen, if people want to find out more about how to work with you, where can they go? Yeah,
so you can go to womenconquerbiz.com. Or if you want to listen to more of this, you can go to womenconquerbiz.com/free. And there's a tool there to really help you get clear about your goals, which also helps you with things like technology. So you can also find me on LinkedIn. That's probably the place where I'm the most active. And of course, Facebook. And, you know, I'm firing up my podcast again. And so, yeah, I'm around.
Okay.
You can find
good.
me.
Well, I'll put some of those links in the show notes so that people can click directly. I'll put some in the comments as well, so that people don't have to work too hard to find you. Thank you so much for being on the show with me today. I really appreciate you being here. And you had some great messages, some great things for people to be considering and think about in their own business. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me.
And to those of you who are watching and or listening, thank you for being here with us today. Of course, if you have questions about pricing in your business, what I recommend is you head on over to The Pricing Lady or JanineListon.com and grab my pricing scorecard. It's a self-assessment tool that'll help you to understand where you are with pricing in your business. That's all for today, everyone. I wish you all the best. And until next week, enjoy pricing, everyone.